Picture this. You wake up on a straw-stuffed mattress that reeks of mold. The light streaming through the wooden slats in the wall, ice and gentle sunlight. It's a harsh reminder that the fire in the hearth has long gone out, and the morning air is cold enough to bite through your skin. Medieval life wasn't a fantasy. It was a constant war between your fragile human body and a world built to break it. Your first challenge wouldn't be understanding the feudal system or learning how to fight. It would be figuring out how to stay alive for just one more hour at a time when even that wasn't promised. You're in a one-room cottage, dirt floor, no shoes, no running water. And somewhere outside, a bell is tolling for mass. With what? Soap, if it existed in your region, was expensive and rarely used by commoners. And manage not to touch anything questionable. You still wouldn't blend in. Your speech is wrong. Your behavior is strange. Your teeth are too clean. Your body hair might be shaved or trimmed in ways no one has seen before, and that makes you dangerous. In many villages, people wipe their hands on straw or their clothes. If you're a germaphobe today, medieval life would feel like psychological torture. You don't understand the language. You don't know the customs, and you're already late. A 2022 study from Cambridge University shows that bread in the Middle Ages often had traces of fungus, dirt, and bacteria from filthy milling equipment. That's right, even your daily bread could be a slow death sentence, and you haven't even made it past breakfast. Forget dragons and knights. There's no sewage system, no trash pickup, no plumbing. People empty chamber pots onto the street, where it mixes with horse manure and rotting scraps. This was normal. This was survival. You'd try not to breathe too deeply, but it is not the smell that'll get you. It is what is in the smell. Airborne bacteria. Disease, your stomach growls, you're hungry, but there's no pantry, no corner store, and you don't know how to farm, forage, or even cook with what you might find. In the Middle Ages, the average peasant consumed a diet heavy in bread, onions, and whatever was in season, if they were lucky. But the bread wasn't fluffy and fresh. It was coarse, dark, and often mixed with things like sawdust or mashed up beans to stretch the flour. Not by choice, but because it was all they had. If you're from a modern city or suburb, your gut flora isn't built for medieval food or the germs it carried. But let's assume you do. You walk outside. Everything smells. Sanitation wasn't just lacking, it was unthinkable. The very idea of germs wouldn't exist for another 500 years. You wash your hands? But here's the thing. Even if you could stomach the food, hold your breath through the filth, and manage not to touch anything questionable, you still wouldn't blend in. Your speech is wrong. Your behavior is strange. Your teeth are too clean. A 2019 study in Past and Present Journal outlines how rapidly medieval towns could turn on outsiders. People were tried as witches or spies for things as simple as knowing how to read or healing someone with herbs. Your modern knowledge could be seen as sorcery. Even wearing the wrong clothes or carrying a strange object could mark you as a threat. Your body hair might be shaved or trimmed in ways no one has seen before, and that makes you dangerous. You might be subjected to trial by ordeal, holding a red-hot iron or being dunked in water to see if you float, because floating meant you were guilty. No workers' rights. Women were considered property first of their fathers, then their husbands. Homosexuality was punishable by death in most of Europe. Trans identities had no public language, no legal recognition, no safety. Even an accidental gesture, a smile held too long, a gaze that lingered, could lead to suspicion, exile, or execution. A woman who spoke out of turn, refused marriage, or acted unwomanly could be beaten, imprisoned, or worse. Questioning that plan, even silently, could land you in the stocks or worse. In some eras, simply owning the wrong book could cost you your life. If you could keep your head down, survive the winter, obey your lord, please your priest, and raise children who might not live to see adulthood, you huddle near a small fire if you can afford fuel. There's no electricity, no lights, no locks. Wolves prowl the woods outside, and bandits roam the countryside. If you live near a town, you might hear the town watch strike the hour or chase down a thief. If you live in the country, you sleep lightly and pray no one breaks in. Even noble women weren't safe. Marriage alliances often came with threats of violence, forced pregnancy, or political imprisonment. And childbirth, 1 in 3 women died giving birth. There were no hospitals, only midwives and prayers. No concept of mental health. If you somehow ended up in a castle instead of a hut, you'd still be freezing. Castles were stone refrigerators. You'd still eat bad food, often worse, because it was heavily salted or spiced to cover up rot. And you'd be expected to play dangerous political games, marry for strategy, and maybe die in a war that had nothing to do with you. You work or you starve. You work or you're punished. You don't complain because no one listens. It's not just that medieval people didn't know science. It's that they lived in a world where pain and superstition were state-sanctioned. In a society built on fear of heresy, of witchcraft, of the unknown being different could be fatal. And in the Middle Ages, that meant danger. Every small wound could turn septic. Antibiotics wouldn't be discovered for another 700 years. Most people relied on herbal remedies, poultices made of crushed plants or prayers. Surgeries were done with no anesthesia. Bleeding someone with leeches was a common cure for everything from a headache to the plague. And if you're caught, the local justice system wouldn't protect you, it'd break you. Trials weren't about fairness. They were about fear. Now let's talk health. You're not getting out of this day without a cut, a burn, or a blister. That means you're ready for work sunrise to sunset. No breaks. Medieval peasants worked harder than most modern humans ever will. Agricultural labor was brutal, tilling fields with wooden tools, hauling buckets of water from rivers or wells, and bending over for hours with no ergonomic anything. The average medieval farmer burned more than 4,000 calories a day just surviving. If you're not physically trained for that kind of workload, you'd collapse by noon. And if you think your immune system would help, think again. Your body is adapted to processed foods, filtered water, and vaccines. You've likely never encountered things like dysentery, ergotism, or the plague. Your ancestors might have survived it, but their immunity wasn't passed to you like a cheat code. You'd be at square one sick, shivering, and lying on a flea-ridden cot while a monk reads your last rites. Let's say somehow you avoid illness. Maybe you hide your strange speech and keep your head down. And remember, there's no safety net. And if you're a woman, multiply everything by 10. If you're LGBTQ+, your chances of surviving the social climate are near zero. Religion dominates every aspect of life. You're expected to attend Mass, obey the church, and accept suffering as part of God's plan. And still, there's more. Night falls. It gets cold, really cold. Your house has no insulation. Your clothes aren't warm enough. You'd think the elite had it easier. Not really. The truth is, medieval life didn't care if you were smart, kind, curious, or brave. It cared if you could endure. But let's say somehow you beat the odds. You ate the bread. You drank the water. You didn't die of exposure, infection, childbirth, suspicion, or stupidity. Congratulations, you survived the day. But did you? Because what the Middle Ages really robbed you of, more than safety or health or comfort, is the illusion of autonomy. Sharper in the ways that mattered, more observant, more resilient. Their instincts were tuned to a frequency we can no longer hear. They lived with death so intimately that they didn't fear it like we do. They planned for it. They faced pain without morphine, loss without counseling, hunger without rescue. You don't get to choose what you want to do. Historians have found evidence of medieval workers crafting shoes with layered, padded soles to reduce strain during long labor. Farmers learned how to rotate crops not because they studied agriculture, but because they watched nature. Women passed down healing remedies, some still used in modern medicine, without ever writing them down. Blacksmiths shaped iron with precision we now struggle to replicate. Artisans painted frescoes that lasted centuries. Builders erected cathedrals so mathematically perfect that they still baffle engineers. You don't get to wake up and follow your dreams. There is no dream. There is a task, and that task is survival. A world with antibiotics, electricity, glasses, indoor plumbing, and Google. You were never meant to survive a medieval day, and embraced a life measured not in years, but in sunrises survived. You were meant to benefit from 1,000 years of people who did. Every day you lived was one more than most got. Their wisdom passed through bone and bloodline, forged into the DNA that lets you walk tall and dream big and complain about Wi-Fi outages. Your mind shaped by rights, freedoms, and choice might crumble in a single day. The sanitized past. The truth of the Middle Ages isn't chainmail and honor, it's toothaches and typhoid, famine and fire, ignorance and ingenuity fighting for space in the same wooden hut. You weren't built for their world, but they built the world that made you. Your week revolved around religious obligation, fasting days, and labor. Your time wasn't your own. Your body wasn't yours. If your Lord declared war, you marched. If the church declared a tithe, you paid. If your neighbor got sick, you buried them. You are born into a station, and you likely die in it. The concept of anxiety, depression, or trauma didn't exist as we know it. If you showed signs of distress, you might be labeled possessed or punished for laziness. Grief was something you swallowed. Rage was something you feared. Silence was your safest option. A farmer's child becomes a farmer. A serf's child remains bound to the land. Mobility wasn't just rare, it was almost mythical. The idea that you could choose your own destiny would have sounded insane. And if you think you could game the system with your modern intelligence, you re-forgetting the most important rule of medieval life. Intelligence didn't matter without access. Books were handwritten, chained to walls, and written in Latin meaning you, a commoner or even a merchant, likely wouldn't be allowed to read them anyway. Literacy was a privilege of the church and the elite. Your modern education would be worthless unless you could somehow teach it, and no one would believe you long enough to try. They married, raised children, sang songs, told stories by firelight, and carved out beauty from a world of suffering. They passed down talis, crafted cathedrals, invented languages and legends. They had festivals and dances, games and guilds, markets bustling with life. They built the bones of the world we now take for granted. Even the calendar itself worked against you. There was no therapy, no self-care, no mental health day, and yet people lived. Somehow they endured. That is the haunting truth of it. Medieval people weren't weaker or dumber than you. They were tougher. And they did it again, and again, and again. Your body pampered by climate control, hygiene, medicine, and convenience might not make it through a single week. This isn't to say you're soft. It's to say they were forged in fire. Because when you look closer, their lives weren't just brutal. They were brilliantly adapted. So no, you wouldn't survive. Not because you're weak, but because you're from another world. And that's not failure. That's inheritance. You carry their blood, their choices, their legacy. So the next time you watch a medieval movie or wander through a Renaissance fair, remember this. You're witnessing the edited version. Could you survive? Maybe. But only if you unlearn everything you thought you knew, gave up every luxury you never realized was luxury. Because back then, every morning was a miracle. Every bite was a blessing. And maybe, just maybe, that's the greatest legacy of all.